welcome to this roundtable about acting for the living. We try to discuss all this conversation about what can we do and how can we act for the living to a society level, to the individual level, and also to this new narrative that we need to build. So we have in this panel, which was supposed to be a round table, but it looks like more like a buffet, as we say, because we have a lot of people and a lot of very good ingredients for all what we are going to discuss. We will have Satish Kumar. Hello, Satish.
Hello.
How are you, Satish?
Very good, very good. It is a pleasure to be part of this wonderful panel and good to see all my friends and some new friends. I think it's a very important subject to talk about action for living. First of all, when we act for living, we act out of love for the life. It is, one can act out of anger or out of compassion or out of love. So we act for life because we love life. And when we become sort of deprived of love and compassion, then people act for very selfish reasons. They act out of anger or out of fear or out of lust or power, out of greed. All those things take to wrong action. So acting out of love and compassion should be the first principle. The second is all life needs to be protected and respected. Reverence for life, as Albert Schweitzer talked about. All life, human life, animal life, plant life, all life are sacred. So we must treat life with complete love and non-violence. So non-violence is the one important principle for our action. And so we act, when we are acting, we do three things. First of all, we protest what is not right. So all the great movements in the world, such as Mahatma Gandhi's movement for independence of India, Martin Luther King's movement for racial integrity, and Nelson Mandela's movement, and then Wangari Maathai planting trees, and many other movements in the past, they all had this element of protesting against what is wrong in our present society. But these great movements were not one-sided. They protested, but at the same time, they acted to protect what is good, protecting biodiversity, cultural diversity, indigenous wisdom, indigenous cultures, local economies, local communities, rights of people, rights of poor people, underprivileged people. All these things need to be protected. So protecting beauty, protecting cultures, protecting the integrity of the land, protecting life. That is the second part of this movement. So we need to do that. We need to protest and we need to protect. And then we also need to build alternatives. So Mahatma Gandhi called it constructive program. So we are not saying no, no, no to wrong things. We also say yes, yes, yes to good things. And we build new communities, new schools, new universities, new colleges, new ways of agroecology, new ways of permaculture, new ways of doing things, so that we are not stuck in the past. We take and learn from the past and we move in that tradition and culture, and also create new ideas and new projects and new communities and new ways of doing it without being in sort of contradiction to the past. Which is good past. But what is bad past, like the centralized, industrialized, materialistic, consumerist cultures that we have seen in the last 200 years. So this is a kind of protecting life and enhancing life. That is our work, with compassion, non-violence, and love. These are basic principles. And then we not only protect what is now, but we also protect the future generations. We are enjoying life. We are enjoying beauty of life. We are enjoying the wealth of life, the natural wealth, the cultural wealth, the human imagination, religious traditions, many, many things we are enjoying because our ancestors built these traditions and cultures and architecture and languages and the beauty of literature and music and so many things. So in the same way, we are creating something for the future generations as well. And I'm so thinking of the native people in America, North America. They believe that whatever action we take today, we should think of the 7th generation. So our work should not be only kind of short term. It should be a long-term commitment so that our future generations, many, many generations to come, can celebrate and enjoy and live good life. So our economy should not be a linear economy so that we take from nature, use it and destroy it and put it on the waste and pollution and landfills. This kind of linear economy is very short term. Whereas a cyclical economy where we are thinking about the future generations, future life, future living, that is also part of our consciousness. So we build something which will last not for even 7 generations, but for thousands of generations. So our economy, our culture, our way of life should be such that it can last forever and ever and ever for millions of years to come, as we have inherited life from millions of years of the past. So this is a big picture. It's a kind of big mind, big heart, big consciousness, and living life in such a way, beautiful way, good way, comfortable way, but without waste, without pollution, without destruction, so that we don't just use up all our natural resources in such a way that nothing left for the future generations. So this is the kind of overview of life that I would like to see people pursuing in that way. So acting for life, acting for the web of life, acting for living now and forever. That will be my proposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Satish. I even finished my question up, everything, and you went, and I think about resources. There is a lot of resources left inside yourself, Satish Kumar. It's always like impressive to see how the energy that you have when you talk about all those things. Thank you very much. So to summarize, it's to protest, to protect, and to build anew.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, Satish. I will continue with Vandana. And Vandana, I think my question is still, I think if you want to bounce back on the idea of what it means for you, acting for the living, and then I will ask you about like about the youth and how do you see this movement and how things are also changing in the young generation. So, but my first question is, for you, what does it mean acting for the living?
Well, for me, acting for living means living, you know, living is action, and breathing is action, and drinking water is action, and doing it in the right way. Eating is action. Doing it in the right way, you do it for life, and do it in the wrong way, you do it in anti-life ways. You talked about the mind. You know, we mustn't forget that for 400 or 500 years, we've got a very conscious imposition of a mental framework and worldview that says there is no life. Yeah? That the earth is dead inert matter to be exploited, that the idea that nature is sacred is an impediment in the empire of man over lesser creatures, and that the creatures are merely machines. And as Descartes said, don't be misguided by the pain when you hurt an animal. It is just the machine creaking. And this mechanistic worldview, within the colonial instinct, is behind the entire violence we see around us, including the fires in California, last year the fires in Australia. And, you know, the Australian people farmed, were not bushmen. They actually managed fires. And today there's an essay of how the indigenous people of California managed the fires. And they were experts in land, in biodiversity. And it's when they were pushed into nature and nature was colonized, their knowledge was pushed into ignorance. The divide between nature and humanity, which I call an ecological apartheid, was created. this totally artificial separation, that humans are outside the web of life. Humans are masters and can destroy the web of life because we don't depend on it, because we are so superior that we'll always find a substitute, except that each substitute in my 50 years of research has shown has a heavier footprint and deeper illusions. It doesn't substitute what they claim. So for example, chemical farming, industrial agriculture, they said GMOs are a substitute. But the use of Roundup and glyphosate increased 1,500 times with GMOs. Pesticides increase more. So it's not a substitute, it's just a new spin to sell more of the old toxic and a new toxic. I think another part of that divide is culture and nature. I see behind you, Mark, a lovely sign of be wild. To me, life is wild. Life is self-organized. If you're not a machine, you're wild. As a human being, if you're free, you're wild. But wild has been made to look unkempt, managed, uncultured, whereas coexistence and co-creation with the wild and other species is the highest culture, as all indigenous cultures teach us. I would basically think self-organization is a key aspect of life. And if anything is self-organized, it flows from within. Therefore, it is free. Therefore, life is freedom. Life and freedom are not separable. Control from outside and lack of freedom go together, as Satish said, centralization. But it also goes with the fact that when something is self-organized and evolves from within, it grows in its own uniqueness. Every child is different. Every culture is different. Every species is different. Within a species, every little member has a little variation. We save seeds, thousands of varieties of rice. But within the same variety, every grain is not identical. They're different from another variety enough. Just like the races are somewhat different. But within the whites and within the blacks and within the browns and within the yellows and within the reds, there is so much variation. I've called the inability to see diversity and freedom in life the monoculture of the mind, and it is a blindness. For the future generations, I think there's a very conscious attempt to make it look like, you know, we were ruled by the British and they created divide and rule policy. And they created a split between Hindus and Muslims who worked together, stayed together, fought the East India Company together and threw them out. We had the partition. But your United States is being totally divided by race right now. Class, of course, has been a huge division with the 1% and the 99%. But I notice the media is very, and I call it the billionaire media, is very consciously making it look like there's a generational conflict. Except in life, there's a generational evolution, continuity, handing over. So to the young people, I would say, all species for continuity, all life needs ancestors. Every seed has ancestors. Every culture has ancestors. Look for your ancestors. Love them, respect them, and that's how your future will grow.
Thank you, Vandana. I think it's a good transition with Casey. And Casey, for you, could you maybe give you your definition of what is for you the web of life, why it needs to be protected, what needs to be protected exactly, and also the relationship with the elders and the ancestors. I know it's very present in the Lakota culture. And could you give your read from that?
Zatia, Judy, Banka Wau, Banka, Mashte Banka, Gaha, Inaha, Jaha. I'm a Ponca woman. I live in Oklahoma, and the teachings that I have comes from the plains of Turtle Island. And I want to tell Satish and Vandana, you fill my heart and my spirit with your wisdom. I thank you for that. I'm feeling him. a sense of spirit that is so strong and powerful that it's kind of tricky to find the words. So I'll go to our spiritual chief, our chief of chiefs, Leonard Crow Dog, who is Lakota, and part of where our teachings come from. It's actually a very simple concept that we are all related in this sacred system of life that the Creator put in place, that the great mystery put in place. My brother, Leonard Crow Dog, he says, I graduated from the University of the Universe. And in that kind of teachings, he teaches us about exactly the way that our people have to look at this non-colonized brain thought. My mother, a Ponca woman, was kidnapped at the age of 6 and put into boarding schools by the colonists. And she didn't break free until she was 15 years old. And she, it's kind of funny to me, she slammed the history teacher in the side of the head with a history book and said, I'm never going to listen to this again because this is not the way of our people. The colonizers came at us from a place of fear, from a place of putting the sources of life into a box and selling it, where we had no concept of that. Within our traditional language, if one looks at the concepts of life, one understands that those that make up this robe, this body that we wear over our spirit, are our relatives in the truest sense and are part of us as we are part of them. Those relatives may have roots in the ground. They may be called corn that we eat. They may run on 4 legs. They may fly in the air. They may be air itself. They may be the fire that gives us warmth through the Father, Son. They may be within the rhythms of the Moon Mother. They may be part of the fins that swim in the sacred waters. They may be the waters. But they, all of those, make up this robe that I wear right now. And so I am inseparable from them. And human beings have to come to an understanding that is so basic, is that if you eat, if you drink, if you breathe, you are part of all that is, and it is a part of you. There is no separation. Therefore, it is our sacred honor, our sacred duty, our sacred obligation to protect the sacred and to understand that we are not protecting nature. We are nature protecting itself. Humans, in believing in their separation, in believing in their superiority, in listening to their ego instead of their spirit, have begun to look at things in such a manner that the humans are about to erase themselves from this sacred cycle of life. And only by realigning ourselves with the natural laws that have been put in place by the great mystery itself, that have been nurtured and cared for as our Mother the Earth cares for us. The ancestors have kept that way open, have put a road in front of us and behind us. That is a circle way of understanding that as we take, we give. As we give, we receive. As we engender a way forward for our youth and set an example, not only with words, but with deeds, that we are setting a place forward for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and that their sacred way of life is something that doesn't belong to us. It belongs to them already. And we are the caretakers of that way of life. Only the caretakers. And only when all human beings accept that and start looking, there's ways forward. You know, humans are very smart animals. They know how to pray to the Father, Son in a sacred way, but also to make a machine that they call solar energy. They know how to recognize the winds that blow in every direction that connects us. And yet they could make a machine that makes the kind of energy that heats and cools their house because they want to be creatures of comfort. There are ways forward for us to do the correct thing. You know, my relative, VANDANA, has forever said that the seeds have a life of their own and understand that they are as individual as we are as human beings, because we are the seeds of resistance. They are the seeds of resistance. And they have a life that can carry us through. She has inspired me in my own homeland here for my son, Mikasi, my son, Jeff, and my daughters, to plant our sacred pampa corn in our most polluted corridors in order to regenerate the seeds and to regenerate the soils that have been polluted. And it's working. It's working, you know. Her inspiration of understanding these sacred seeds has given life to many thoughts. We even have planted it, my son Mikasi, in a corn ceremony where these pipelines are coming through and created sacred sites to stop them from coming through. We've had to be in the streets protesting because here in the United States, they think race is a black and white issue. They talk about 400 years of slavery and 400 years of racism. But it's been over 500 years since those colonists came upon our shores with their doctrine of discovery and started calling our sources of life their resources and taking it through the name of Christianity, through the name of colonization, without understanding that there are original instructions in every indigenous culture worldwide, and that those original instructions are the only way to retune oneself into the natural laws. I thank you for listening and for enriching my soul and spirit with your words. Sean.
Thank you, Casey. I think we'll continue on that with maybe Camille and Adelaide. I think I would like to hear what you have to, when you listen all those elders, all this wisdom as young people who you are going to be maybe more in charge or more into action to all this wisdom could take place and how we can implement change. How do you feel when you listen to such a speech and from where it's coming from? Camille first or Adelaide?
Okay, you hear me well? Cool. Yes, first, it's inspiring must be the word, because I feel like I own all the activism I'm doing thanks to VANDANA here. So it's such a pleasure to meet you by screen. Really, I grew up in a place where there were just farmer and my family, and I started reading your books, and then I said, okay, this is going to be my whole life, fighting for seeds. So it just, for me, like, we need you to get inspired. The weird sensation we have as youth is that usually our parents are supposed to be the one that told us how to grow up in the world correctly, properly. So they told us, for example, this is the fire. If you touch it, you get burned. So don't do this. But nowadays, there's this weird sensation that what we told us, like the consumption society and so on, lead us to our own destruction. So this feel inside is that we have to do something. We might not know really why, but we get this call inside that we have to act. So yes, listening to all of you, for me it's important to maybe get the idea here, what I'm doing, what I feel here. So this is really interesting. And the second thing I wanted to tell you, as you said, I think it was Cassie talking about this, about the fact that we are nature. It's something that I understand quite recently also, that where I grew up actually, I couldn't believe that we could destroy nature, because I woke up every morning with the mountain, the huge mountain in front of me, and I couldn't imagine that we as humans could be as strong as destroying it. And then I moved to Paris, and then I realized all the crazy things we're doing just for money. So I started speaking, and I started telling to others that we're not fighting for nature actually. We are talking about environment, as we were not part of it. I find it silly. What is environment? We are we are nature. We are the one that need to breathe. We're not the one that need to have water. We are the one that needs to walk into nature, to eat vegetable and so on. So what I like telling to people is that it's not a nobody or something that, oh, she's the one like the climate activist one. It's not only because I love trees and animals and so on. It's because I love life so much. Then I want it to last as long as I can, and I want to honor this. So I will finish just by saying that often, like the media and all the other things that we have said, that we are making fear, we are giving fear to people, we are scary. That is not true. It's not true, honestly. I think that hopes come from action, and this is because we are acting that we feel the happiness. So we are profoundly happy as long as we do our best to honor this life we have.
Thank you. Camille, Adelaide, do you want to react?
Yes. First of all, thank you, all of three of you, for your amazing stories or information that you give us through your books, through everything. Like, I've heard all three of you already in conferences and everywhere, and this is where also we get our information, which is very important. I want to point out two things. Like, it's first, yeah, of course, information. We need to understand what is happening. We need to understand, like, yeah, what is happening to our world, to understand why we have to act. And this is a real problem still for us as youth, because we were born in this society. You know, we were born telling ourselves, like, we can go shopping and we don't have to understand what is behind our clothes. We can go buy a phone and we don't have to understand what's behind that phone and how it was made. And we were born like this, and every day, no questioning, just being like, life is great as long as you have the money, you got access to everything. This is really how we were taught. And it's crazy to realize that, like Camille said, that we are taught this way today, because we forget the links behind everything. We forget where it comes from. We forget the source of everything we do every day, of everything we buy every day. And so, of course, we don't understand where the destruction comes from, because we're like, I'm not part of it, but because we don't understand how we are part of it. And so that's where the information is really important for us to realize, is linking everything we do. Because if we realize where our clothes come from, if we realize what happens when we use a car, when we take a plane, etc., then we can start understanding why there is a link in our everyday action to the destruction of the planets. And this link is really hard to make for every citizen, because once you realize the link, you cannot go back to before. You cannot tell yourself that where we live today is okay and how we live today is okay, because you just realize that everything you do every day, in some way, it destroys something somewhere. And so this is why I think there is lots of youth that now can start to react and want to act is because thanks to your work, thanks to the work of NGOs, of movements from before us, we started to understand. There were some seeds that were put in the ground, and maybe we are some kind of the results of those seeds. And now no one can stop us, because we are all generations together, and we are facing this, and no one will stop us until we protect everything that needs to be protected. And Satish, you said that we protest, and we protect, which is true. And I think for me, it's mainly I protest to protect, because I feel today is the only way to protect our environment, the environment that we are part of, is to protest. At least as a European white person that has the privilege to do it. And so it is our responsibility to at least protest, to at least make people realize what we are making to the world. And I am so happy that I am every day trying to learn more and get more information and try to get as many people as possible to get involved and to understand. Because I feel now it's positive, it's possible. And like you said, Camille, a lot of people tell us that we bring negative messages, that we are catastrophic, that we exaggerate. No, it's not true. We actually just tell the truth. And then since we are activists, we are active, we believe that there is the solution. There is a way to change things. It's still possible. So we are positive people that want to change the world, that think it's possible, and that don't want to do the same mistakes as the other generations. So I think I will stop here so that we can continue the discussion. But thank you so much for everything you have said, and I'm very happy to be here with you today.
Thank you, Adelaide, for your enthusiasm. I think I remember when we discussed 10 years ago, Vandana, about the movie A Quest for Meaning, when I asked you about, do you have hope? And you told me, I have a lot of hope in the young people. I think they've seen the bluff and they know this world is cheating on them and they want a more better and authentic world. And it took 10 years, but now they've seen the bluff. Everyone is seeing the bluff. And I think things are moving, and it's moving, I feel, from this path that I think this inner path, like I can see in Adelaide or in Camille's heart, it's really about fighting for nature and with this love for nature. And I think this is going to be very contagious. And I'd like to continue now with Maurice, that I don't see on the video. Yes, Maurice. And we have been talking about this relationship, this interdependence. And for you as a photographer, as a speaker, and you've spent a lot of time also with indigenous people, and you still have this European background. For you, the word that's very important is the mitakuye oyasin, which means we are all related. I'd like to see how you see also this evolution. And we've been talking about whales, about the sacred, and changing what is the standards of living and seeing the world. And I'd love to hear you on what for you is this meaning of the mitakuye oyasin and this idea of where we're all related. We need to protest, but we can dance to protest. I think you are also a sand dancer, and maybe you can say why you think dancing is also part of a way of protesting, and your definition of wealth and what you've seen, what is wealth when you go to indigenous people and you photograph or spend time with them.
Well, thank you. First of all, of course, I would like to say how honored I am to be part of such a distinguished group of people. As speaking the last one, I was able to hear some elders' wisdom, and then I was able to hear some youth wisdom. Youth wisdom is the Western world is very disregarded. But among the wise people on this earth, everybody knows that youth wisdom is very important. I use my personal experience in trying to pass around what was given to me. And my personal experience is the experience of someone who was lucky enough so I could partly partly, decolonize my mind, thanks to the proximity of some experts. This world is all of a sudden losing a little bit of its arrogance, the hegemonic society, the hegemonic system, all of a sudden starting to scratch its head a little bit, not so sure anymore of how's going to be the future. When we were so much convinced that this big avenue of progress and civilization and development was a never-ending thing. And so the question is the question of surviving. But hey, look how they do on the news channels facing an issue. They call the experts. Well, we have experts of surviving on this planet. And they're not in Wall Street. And they're not in the headquarters of the big multinational companies. Talking to some people of India, some of the greatest experts of survival in this world are among the most deprived, economically deprived people of very humble villages. But every day they wake up and they make their way to another day, feeding their kids the best they can. They are experts of survival against the greatest adversity. My Native American family, all nations, among them the Ponca Nation, are some of the greatest experts of how to survive the greatest adversity history ever put people in front of. What is their secret? How did they manage? How do you do? I think in that resilient power is the medicine for all of us to experience. And it consists in ceasing to believe in what we used to believe. I think one thing very important we want to share with the youth, if we all agree, Mrs. Shiva, Mr. Kumar, and you, Casey, on, we don't want to change the system. We don't want to change the system. People came before us willing to change the system. We don't want to change this system. We don't want to revolutionize it. We want to get free of that system. We want to get out of that system. We want to free our minds. In that aspect, we don't want to act for the living. We want to interact with the living. Even the words we use say who we are. Now in my country, they say the environment or protect water as a resource. What kind of foolishness is that? I come from water. I spent 9 months in water to become a human being, and not in the womb of a man, not in the womb of a man dictating his will to everybody, in the womb of a woman, just like this earth mother is feminine. As a 60 years old macho guy, male guy raised in that system, I know exactly how the patriarchal dimension of that system is part of the sickness. There is a disease of that so-called civilization, and it's called hostility. No doubt, when they wanted to exterminate the Native American, they called them, the Native Americans, they called them hostile Indians. There is no such thing as hostility to anyone that observes nature. There is no hostility in nature. There is an organization. There is sometimes a roughness. There is sometimes a very straightforward way for the feline of Africa to feed. But it's done with no hostility. the lioness doesn't have hatred for the antelope. It is just a way of perpetrating its own destiny. So the belief that we're gonna get rid of that system of hostility by developing an hostility against it is just a perpetuation of what they want us to keep on being. And I believe there is one place, there is only one place where you change the world. And I will ask the opinion of the other participants, but my belief is there is only one place where you change the world, only one. It is in the mind and in the heart of the little ones. So how we educate our youth has to change. We don't need gold medal. We don't need number one. We don't need I'm above others. We need to forget about I and recover the power of we and the beauty of we. So once again, it's for me, it is a little bit of a personal mutation. And I realize what this world needs is to mute. And I see it's coming. I see it is happening right now. Those who don't want to see because their ideology is stronger than their intelligence, they refuse to observe. But I see it happening. I see it happening. And it is a motion. It is a momentum. But the treasure of all nations is its youth. And you have the power and you are in charge. And young ladies, I will end up like that. In my country, some powerful old men started laughing about a young girl from college, a Swedish girl. The way I was raised with my relatives, my Ponca relatives, for example, the way I was raised is a grown-up man doesn't start laughing at a young lady teenager. He listens to what she has to say. And he understands that, hey, she might have a point. Why not? So listening to each other, and by each other, I mean even the ocean, my wife and I were by a little bit before, you know, listening starts to be a key thing. To conclude, we say, what can we do acting for the living? Well, part of it is to stop acting. What can we do for the trees? Well, stop doing anything, leave them alone. You know, what can we do? What can we do for the fishes of the ocean? Well, nothing, just stop doing things, stop acting. So those 8 weeks of lockdown here in my country were a beautiful experience because we could see when we stopped acting, when we stopped doing stuff, well, some things get at ease and enjoy it really, really, really well.
Thank you, Maurice. And let's continue on this idea of action and contemplation. I think Satish, as a monk and living a life of a monk life, you were very attracted by also action and not only contemplation. For you, what is the right balance between acting, and there is this emergency for the web of life and like protecting the condition of life on this planet, yes, and the inner transformation and the time of contemplation and reconnecting with the living before protecting.
Yes. Actually, what Maurice said, very beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much for your very wise words, Maurice. There is no contradiction between acting and not acting. We need both. Yes, if we stop doing what we are doing to trees and forests and oceans in the wrong way, we need to reduce our action there. But also we have to act to love, to care to celebrate. When I said protecting, when you are protecting, you are celebrating life. You are celebrating beauty. When you are protecting beauty, you are celebrating. So action and non-action go together. You meditate, contemplate to prepare yourself. You sleep at night for 8 hours. That's a non-action. That's important. So that when you wake up in the morning, you can plant the seeds, you can plant the trees, you can take care of the child, you can take care of your parents, you can do something. So sleeping at night and acting at the daytime are in balance. It's a kind of a dance of action and non-action together. Action and contemplation together. Meditation and action together. It's a dance. There's no one or the other. It's a both. So I agree with you that during this coronavirus crisis, when aeroplanes stopped flying and the cars stopped driving, we had more clean air and clean water and clean life. That was wonderful. So I think every year, perhaps for 3 months, everything should be in quarantine, and we should stop flying, and we should stop driving, and we stop all this kind of pollution and waste that we do. That'd be a very good thing. But the positive action of celebration of life, protecting, planting. Yes, we don't do anything to trees. Then trees will survive, they will grow themselves. But because we have been destroying trees for so many years, now we need to plant more trees so that we can restore the balance. So it's a kind of action and non-action go together. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna and Krishna, there's a dialogue between the two. And Krishna says to Arjuna that act without anger, without fear, without greed, without your self kind of centered and a kind of way, but act in the service. This is why when I started to act, I started to speak about acting. I said, act out of love, act out of compassion. And when you act out of love and out of compassion, you will not destroy the trees and you will not destroy the environment and the ecology of life. You will celebrate. And when you are celebrating, then you are naturally protecting. So celebration for me is the right way of action.
Thank you, Satish. And Vandana, to continue on that, I think you've been active, you've been very active and like putting all your energy in fights that were very sometimes overwhelming. And I would like to know, like personally, what was like your practice, or how do you see like this activism? How did you ground it in spirituality, or what? How did you find the strength to continue, even if I think in the last 10 or 20 years, the awareness of those issues was not as important, as obvious as it is today? What was the role of spirituality, of personal inner work to manage to still be like, to have this strength and to have all these fights without having a burnout?
You know, the colonizing world, particularly the Anglo-Saxon world, has created so many separations and oppositions and hierarchies in things that actually connected and are related. You know, when you see the earth as your family and everyone as your relationship, you don't then start in relationships having hierarchies and superiority. You have nourishment, you have love, you care. My activism springs from a deep sense of oneness with the earth, with all beings, a deep spiritual duty to protect, to care, to have compassion. And from there flows the resistance to that which harms. You know, began with the days of Chipko way back in the 70s. But I really see my life, you know, Chipko means to hug. I see my life as hugging that which needs protection, which is life. My baby, the trees of the Himalaya, the seed, now the human freedom. Because yes, people are waking up, but we are waking up to the past 500 years. We are waking up to colonialism. We are waking up to the fossil age. But I don't think we are waking up enough to the new fossil age of the new oil. They call big data the new oil. I don't think we are alert enough to how the big money that made the mess over these years and acted with the wrong intention and the wrong consequences, they're talking about reset. But when they're talking about reset, they're not talking about change in values or a change in paradigm. They are now talking about a reset which will shut down the freedom of all others, the freedom of diversity, the freedom of alternatives. And this is a large part of my occupation right now. And we are going to be bringing out a whole new report on the new empire, the new digital empire. And I'm very happy that on the education part, because Satish was such an important part of another thinking of learning from the small school to the Schumacher College, of which I had such a privilege to be part of. And then from the Schumacher College and Satish through the Earth University and Dehradun. And you know, for the young people, want to say, we want to continue our journey walking with them, learning from them learning from nature, learning from the soil, learning from the seed, learning from the practitioners, the experts, as Maurice said. I've always said, the peasant women who've never been to school are the top experts in biodiversity.
Exactly.
Those who learn how to destroy and mutilate life on Earth through genetic engineering, through patenting, ownership, they are not experts in life. They are experts in death. And sadly, this began in Hitler's labs, IG Farben, and there's been a century of ecocide and genocide. So from the 5th to 11th, we are going to be offering, because of the lockdown, a remote, you know, like we are having this conference, a course on return to Earth, of learning from the seed and the soil and food. And then with Satish, from 1st to 4th of November, a smaller course than we normally give on non-violence and compassion and love in the footsteps of Gandhi. Both the power to build on what you love through co-creation, as Maurice said, as well as resisting through love. I really do believe that, that both resistance and creation are two aspects of the same system, just like a child being born and then dying. You know, and part of what people don't realize, a lot of the digital empire and the tech giants of Silicon Valley, they're obsessed with two things. They're obsessed with defeating Mother Nature. They repeatedly say that. Google Life Sciences, we have to defeat Mother Nature. People think they're just about computers and Google Maps. No, they are about defeating nature. They're carrying on the war against nature. And worse, they want to conquer death. They really are thinking that the way to conquer death is make the human being disappear and merge into a machine, and then we will not die. But living and dying is part of the same beautiful process of life. And trying to avoid or trying to prevent others from being born, which is genocide and ecocide. And I think what Casey talked about, how both Aboriginal people and First Nations, the children were taken away and put in boarding schools because the continuity of cultures of love, of acting from love and acting from life, that is what colonizers are afraid of. They are afraid of love, they're afraid of life and freedom, and they're afraid of life. And you know, basically dealing with psychopaths who are living under very deep fear psychosis. And we've got to make sure they don't destroy the world with their fear psychosis, that we protect the world, our love, while we keep them limited in building their empires.
Thank you, Vandana. To continue, Casey, on that, I think what would be interesting is changing the paradigm and seeing like nature not as something dead but alive. Do you think, and that, or how could we give a voice to nature? In your culture, rivers have a spirit, rocks have a spirit, and is there a way to use law to give a voice and to give power to all these elements, and to give a real voice that nature can be part of all what we are now building. And when there is a project, nature could be involved.
Thank you. And thank you to the other speakers. I'm learning so much. I believe that nature's voice is speaking loud and clear right now. You know, we're talking about the sacred fires that are burning on the west coast of Turtle Island and those that are in the Amazon. We've seen the waters build up. We've seen the hurricanes, the tornadoes building and getting larger. We've seen the water coming from the sky, coming from the thunders in massive amounts in some areas and not at all in others. We've seen the rivers overflowing or going dry. This is called the time of purification in our understanding. And we've been told about it for generations that the earth was going to purify herself. And these are her manners of purification. This is how she is going about it. So there is a voice that is being heard. Some humans, like within the Ponca Nation, as when I served as a councilwoman, are also finding ways to help the colonizers understand through our sovereignty and through our immutable Ponca rights of nature statute law that we have put into papers for them to be able to see and understand. We are outlining the rights of nature. VANDANA and I recently were on another Zoom call like this called the Global Alliance of the Rights of Nature. And it is to help the colonizer understand how to do this, how to have a tool, a process to understand through verbalization, through the written word, on what that means for the rights of nature to also have a right to exist and to not feel that separation that they have put upon themselves and continue to do through the fear of losing this imaginary thing that they call money. You know, we still are having our issues here. You know, this activism word is big, like environmentalism. But in reality, it is part of what she just mentioned. It is our sacred duty and honor as humans to be able to protect and understand our portion as nature itself. How do we protect ourselves in the generations to come? This purification that is happening is in progress. It will continue. And one of the young ladies mentioned about killing the earth. We are not killing the earth. She will endure. She always has, through anything that happens. But species of life are disappearing from her breast, even as she nurtures us. Even as she continues to love and care for us, species are disappearing. And humans can be among those if we don't try to get ourselves into a position of understanding how do we all interconnect? How can we uphold all things? In this time of COVID, I was reminded of the seasons themselves that our people have always honored in the past. That is the spring season, one plants, one grows. In the summer season, one harvests, one moves around outside and prepares themselves for the fall where the harvest continues and you're getting yourself ready for winter. COVID reminds me of the winter of our being. That is a time you're supposed to be inside, nurturing your spirit, preparing your mind, meditating, as Satish mentioned, teaching your children. And that's happening all around the world. These institutions called education are being closed down. Mothers and fathers, grandmas and grandpas are gathering together with their children inside their lodges, as we once did, and they're teaching their children their value system. The children are also learning again how to care for their elders. Within our society, we never had old folks' home where we shipped our people off. We never had jails where we imprisoned people. Banishment was the way that happened. Humans are banishing themselves from the natural systems and the natural laws, and they're dying because of that. If we honor the natural seasons, and this season was something that we brought onto ourselves through our carelessness and our disregard for life. We have allowed this one little relative called Corona to grow and transmit, and it's teaching us our old ways are the valuable ways. Our old ways of nurturing and caring for one another, growing our gardens, staying home, nurturing those seeds of life in whatever way they need to be, honoring the water that so she herself will sustain us. So back to the actual, statute that is something that we've done. It is not that we are giving rights to a river. It is recognizing the inherent rights of that river to have her freedom and her life in the manner in which we'll continue to help create all life. And so by recognizing that we are nature protecting itself, by recognizing and throwing a few words onto a piece of paper so that the colonists can get it, understand that we are nature protecting itself, therefore we will create these pieces of paper for them to look at and to hold them responsible. We're doing it out of love because this will care for their generations as well. Maybe they're going to disregard them, but we're not. We're going to care for their 7 generations just as we care for our own. My daughters, I'm so proud of them. Julie and Suzette, I call them undergraduates of MIT. They're matriarchs in training because we have to build our matriarchy back in so it can balance the patriarchy that has been forced upon this world for so long. And in doing so, we empower our men folks to be free of these burdens that have been put on them. And we all live together in this healthy, beautiful manner that the great mystery had put into place.
Thank you, Casey. I'd like to have also like few questions for Adelaide and Camille about technology. I believe there is this idea that we are all connected. We are all connected through the web of life, but sometimes connected with computers, but not connecting with nature. And I would like to see how do you manage to balance and like the idea of technology with all the consequences that technology and social network can bring, and with also this link with nature, and how do you manage to be connected with all the communities that you have and like trying to give a message behind a screen and also still to be connected with nature, and this schizophrenia sometimes that you can have between like using like this big data and all the things that we know are not very good for the environment and leads to all this information that helps to control people, or at least to manipulate our behaviors. How do you manage, and what's your relationship with the technology that is a great tool, but is also a way to disconnect also people?
So first, if I can start by the good aspect of it, the good aspect of it is that I can meet all of you here and learn so much more than just reading your books. So this allowed us to people directly and also to touch thousands of people. Like when we're doing conferences, like maybe we will see 10 people or even 100. But just 3 days ago with Adelaide, we did an action together. There was a climate law that was voted at the European Parliament. and there was a debate inside between 60% or 65%. And it was just one or two deputies inside MAP that could change it. So we said, okay, we call with Adelaide and we said, we need to do something. We brainstormed, and within an hour, we decided to ask people to send an email to this MIP, this deputy, to ask him to be ambitious. So we do this, and within 24 hours, millions of people, not millions, but I would say thousands and very lot of people send him an email to say, please act, please be ambitious. We need you to be ambitious. So we put the pressure through this technology. And if we would have just said it in the street, maybe nobody would have listened to us, because we do not have, as you have, the same power. But then he called us. So it works. Like at the end, he does not vote for the good thing, but still they listen to us because we have the power to bring with us lots of people thanks this technology. So it could at some point help accelerating this stuff. So it's just a way for me. And so it's just a way that we use the rule of the system to change it at some point. So this is a small part of it. And now there is a huge aspect that you thought about that that is not necessarily great, but we've been raised with it. I'm the lucky one because my mother decided to raise us in the middle of the mountain, and I get a phone super late in my life, so I'm not used at other. So it's easy for me sometimes to do not have my phone, take time into nature, and the simple way to be connected to nature is just to spend time. I think we can't protect nature deeply and with sincerity if we do not spend time in nature. I just come from a walk into forest for 2 hours, and I think I learned so much more than if I spend like the whole morning doing some research about biodiversity on my computer. So I would not say that that technology is all bad. We have to use it at some point. Today it will be fake if I just say that it just sucks because I use it for protesting. It's a tool. We can't go out protesting and just missing the school nowadays because of the coronavirus. So we have to invent and to reinvent. So we are making art, we are making stuff, but through social media, it helps us to do stuff like this, like conferences like this. But we know that there's a lot of issues coming with it. Ego, for instance, with social media comes the ego problem, that you get addicted to the people that like you. We call about like, we call about follows. We're not friends anymore. We are just followers. And this is weird because when you don't realize it's real people that you talk to. So I guess I can speak about this with Adelaide because we get a huge waves of haters also. Thanks to the screen, there's much more violence that is allowed because you don't see people in front. So I think Adelaide and I are in the same situation where we received every single day haters and messages of people who just hate us because we are pushing this whole world. And so they feel uncomfortable because we are telling a truth that is uncomfortable for them to hear, because we are telling them what you've done, what you do today does not work anymore. It may have worked at some point, but we need to reinvent it together. We are not telling you that you have to do the old work, but we have to do it together. And so we will have to change. So yeah, through social media, we also get all these waves of people that all the hate and the fear that they have more easily. So yeah, we'll just stop here. And I think you and Mark should answer this question too, because you know a lot about this. So yeah, to finish, just a little advice: spend time in nature. Please do this. It's a huge answer to a lot of questions.
Thank you, Camille. Adelaide, do you want to say something about technology, how it is a tool and how to use it wisely, and how do you manage to use it wisely?
Yeah, okay. So of course, this is a huge question for our generation. again, I was born in 2000. So the phone was already invented, the TV, all of that was in the house that I lived in. I grew up with it, with as many of thousands and millions other kids around me did. So we are called this generation behind our screens. We have two lives. We have the life that we live physically, and then we have the life on the screen. Like, that's a bit like, it's completely crazy, but that's kind of how everything was built up. When we grew up, we were taught this way. We got a phone because everyone has a phone. There is a TV, and of course, here I'm talking on a privileged side, of course, but everyone had it, and so you had to have it. So it's true that until now, even, we are called this generation that is just behind the screens and is super lazy because they stay in the sofa all day long. But the difference this time with our movement, the Fridays for Future movement, is that they used this technology to unite behind powerful message to change a powerful problem. And so now we are using this thing that we were taught, that we were given to do whatever we had to do on it. And now we are creating coalitions all over the world with people that we might have never even met before, but we decide to unite, to do things together and coordinate so that it will be stronger. And that is very important because we used this technology. And now we were able to build a strong movement in such a short amount of time. I mean, now we just recently celebrated our 2 years of striking. It's really a short amount of time. We realized that there were strikes in every single country in the entire world for climate change. This is huge. Like, strikes from youth that decided not to go to school, even in countries where it's really risking their life. So for this technology can also inspire you to change, inspire you because you see very quickly what's happening in other countries. I was inspired by Greta Thunberg because I was like, okay, this little girl, I mean, she's younger than me and she skipped school. Okay, maybe I'll do it. And I had never seen her in my life beforehand. Like, I had never met her, never talked to her, but I was like, okay, I'll do it. So that is probably the positive parts of our technology. And I think I'm really not perfect because, I mean, no one is, but I am probably one of the worst because I use my computer too much. I use my phone way too much. I'm always on it. Mm-hmm. And all of the time it's made me to do activism. It's kind of 99% of my life activism, which is great. But yeah, everything happens on computer, on social media, because it's how you can spread a world as far as possible. Even though we cannot deny that physical actions are also super important to spread a message. And that's why we do both. But like Camille said, during a period like the coronavirus, when you cannot use your best tool, which is either striking or being in the streets or whatever you need to do physically, when you cannot use that strong tool, then you can use an alternative, which is social media. And because as kids, we are kind of good at it, then it can work also. But as I was saying, I'm really not perfect because I use it too much. And I grew up in a small city, so I was not surrounded by beautiful mountains. I was not surrounded by a beautiful nature, even though there is nature, but it's nothing compared to the nature I have seen when I had the chance to go in the Amazon forest in Brazil on the Xingu River last December. I spent only 2 weeks over there, and it changed my entire view on the world and on what I actually had to protect. I changed this idea of, yeah, we need to protect trees. No. You need to protect the system of trees, which means you have to protect the people that protect the trees, which means that climate change is linked to human rights because you have to defend the defenders. if you go there and you destroy the people, then you also destroy the nature. It just goes with it. So that's also when I started to fight for human rights, because I realized actually we need that also in there. And so justice and all of these terms started to come to my mind, and I'm still trying to realize a bit how I have to put them together and how I'm supposed to spread the message around to my family and friends. But it was a very important moment for me. And yeah, so clearly this conclusion is to say, I am not enough in nature. I am not enough surrounded by this beautiful nature and environment that we have, because it's missing a lot. It's a chance today to be able to be surrounded by a lot of nature. It's become rare. And that's why people go on vacation, because then you go to nature and then you can breathe and then go back to your very busy life, because that's the only thing that you need to do to have money, and then to be able to go back to nature. So I think my activism is also to be able to have more nature around it. I was talking this morning with guys that have an amazing project to reforest in every single country of Europe, and they have an amazing plan. I was like, yeah, if I could imagine having a beautiful and huge forest here in my town, it would be very different, and we would see life probably differently. So just saying that I'm not enough in nature, but I want to fight so that we could have more that is around us, so that we don't have to travel around the world to find it. Because during your traveling, you are actually destroying what you want to go see. So it's a vicious circle. So yeah, I need to spend more time in nature. I'll come to you, Camille.
Thank you, Ayed. I think they are young and they are wise. So Satish, Vandana, Casey, you can retire. Now they are.
No, we need you. We need you.
I mean, they're like, I don't think at their age, a lot of people of my generation has all this consciousness. To continue on that, I think now when I did a business school, I'm sorry, and I've been taught about sustainable development, that we need to have economy that are sustainable, but I think now it's too late. We need to go to regenerative kind of economy. And for you, Vandana, what would be the beginning of this idea of really changing the economy for having not only something sustainable, but something really regenerative, and where can we start?
So I think a lot of sustainability went wrong because it tried to sustain a collapsing system. I remember when Monsanto was privatizing water, their documents, inner documents were leaked to me. And they said, privatizing water is an ultimate sustainability project because water's getting scarce, water's getting polluted. And if we control the water by mixing our chemicals in it so that the farmer can't grow a crop without also buying our water, we will have sustainable profits. And that is why we have lost 3 decades, because sustainability was hijacked for the money-making machine to give it a little longer life. And they aren't giving up yet. They'd still like to carry on. For me, sustainability always drew from sustenance. And regeneration is, how do you regenerate the conditions of sustenance? What are the conditions of sustenance? It's life. It's the soil, it's the seed, it's the biodiversity, it's our relationship with our relatives. And this is such an important reason why we have to shift from what is called economy, and I'm increasingly calling it the diseconomy, because the economy means caring for our household, our beautiful planet, our particular places. That's what the original meaning of economy was. But now, or along the way, colonial commerce, plundering, exterminating indigenous people, somehow mutated into definitions of economy. And if you look at how did it define private property, Locke justified the taking over of the lands of indigenous people. How did it define knowledge, Bacon and Descartes? How did it define governance, Hobbes? So they took the colonial empire, turned it into universals for using to build the architecture of our mind. And that's where we are locked in, and that's where we need the decolonization that Maurice talked about. Regeneration is not just regenerating the conditions of ecological life and natural life, it is regenerating the conditions of social life. Because if you look around you, of course, ecosystems are on the verge of collapse, but social systems are on the verge of collapse. People aren't able to live together anymore. The hate and inequality is creating unlivable societies. Paris, and in France, you've had your share of this rupture of society again and again and again. And that's why when you ask, where do you begin? And it comes back to the first question where, Satish talked about acting from love. And then Maurice said, oh, we must stop acting, but we must stop acting in the negative, destructive way. And that's what the fight of the young people is all about. Stop the destruction. Come in the way of wrong action and the diseconomy, but act in the right way. And because we are part of nature, and this is what I've learned in my last 35 years, to really rebuild this loving relationships, you have to begin with your food system. You have to begin with regenerating our food and agriculture, which begins with regenerating the soil. It begins with regenerating your biodiversity. And I've learned that you save some seeds and you grow them out, then the plants will invite the insects, and then the insects will invite the birds. You don't engineer the whole web of life. You just act in humility for your rightful action in your place in the web of life. And that action is a duty. And one of the things that I'm really waking up to now, and I think this is something Satish used to teach in the small school, that the young children should learn how to work. They should learn how to grow their garden, cook their food, do carpentry, because part of colonialism was to turn our bodies into dead nature, the bodies of indigenous people, the bodies of the slaves. Black Lives Matter is all about this, the bodies of women. But they also later, with the fossil age and the age of oil, and it would be so good for the young activists fighting climate change to take this on, they created definitions of productivity and efficiency that made the human being the obstruction. And getting rid of the human being became the definition of efficiency. So the fewer the farmers on the land, the more efficient it is, even though it produces less food, bad food, sickness, climate change, desertification. And now they're at the verge where they're saying, no, we don't need human beings at all. We need farming without farmers. We need artificial intelligence and robotics. And even my country with so many people, where Gandhi said, use the hands, bring the spinning wheel back. Our government is running fast speed to turn factories into automated factories, even while more than 12 million, 120 million people just lost their work during the lockdown. And according to the UNICEF, 1.3 million children will be starving if this kind of lockdown continues. So regeneration is regenerating awareness of who we are. We are spiritual beings, we are ecological beings, we are cultural beings, we are interconnected beings with our other relatives, but we as biological beings have to make the effort that the bee makes to do its work in the web of life, the effort that the bird makes to fly. The effort is a bodily effort, and that's why Gandhi talked about bread labor, as did Tolstoy. Bread labor is actually our body becoming one with the earth to meet our needs and grow our food. And this will be the contest in the next 10 years. The big billionaires and tech giants saying, get rid of people, even in agriculture. They're talking about food without food, made in labs. Let the chemicals and the genetic engineering do the work. Let the Roundup spray giant fields to make protein and carbohydrates. So it's going to be a contest between living reality in interconnectedness and a celebration of life, and a new conquest faking food, impossible burger, faking agriculture, faking knowledge. So it will be the ultimate satyagraha, the ultimate struggle for truth. And it will begin with our bodily reclaiming of the sanctity of this wonderful being that we've been gifted. A body that can work, and as Satish will say, bake bread. And I say, sow a seed.
Very good. Without sowing seeds, we cannot bake bread. So we start sowing the seeds. And when you have sown the seeds, then the crops will grow, and we will have a wheat, and we will have millets, and we have corns, and we have other food stuff. Then we can bake bread. So sowing the seeds is the first step to bake bread. And I totally agree with you 100% what you have just said. The regenerating of social order, regenerating of culture, and regenerating of our way of life is part of regenerating nature. And you talked about education. And when our young people go to schools or universities, teachers look at them and they think that young people have no body. They only have a brain and nothing else. And they feed the brain with external information, outside information of this, that, and the other. And they don't do anything with their whole body, their senses, their hands, their hearts, their legs, how to make anything with their hands, nothing, just brain and information. And this is the way our kind of whole culture and whole society has gone into robotics and artificial intelligence and algorithms and all the things which we have seen and how people are being exploited. Human beings have become instruments of making profit and economic growth and production and consumption, and the nature has become instrument. So humans and nature have been turned into tools or into means to the end of economic growth and profit and money and big business and production, consumption, materialism, all that. So this is the confusion of means and ends. We need to turn this around. And the production, consumption, economy, in the modern sense of economy, not in your sense, beautiful you said, economy is the caring of the household, but we have forgotten that. And now economy means making more money and making more profit. That's the economy. And so that should be the means to the end of human well-being and well-being of the planet Earth and well-being of our natural world. But that end has been lost, and human beings, and as Tracy, you said, nature has become a resource for the economy, where the nature is a source of life, and nature is life itself. And so this confusion of means and ends is driving our society to a kind of aim, which is bringing so much pain and suffering and injustice, social injustice, environmental injustice, everything. So I think that starting with education and your report, I'm looking forward to receiving your report about this digital age, starting with education of head, education of hearts, education of hands, education of whole body, education of senses, and living with our hands and with our body on the land and producing our food, baking our bread, sowing our seeds, and building our houses. All these things are part of living. And if we don't have these skills and we only have a brain thinking, and not even the whole brain, but only the left hemisphere of the brain, and no intuition, no imagination, our university system and educational system has become almost the enemy of imagination. We do not allow any time, any space for imagination, for creativity, no room for dancing, no room for singing, no room for art, no room for crafts, no room for anything, just a kind of technology. So this is a kind of so limited, mean education that we have today. So I think we need a revolution in education. So I totally agree with you about regenerative cultures and regeneration of social orders, at the same time, regeneration of nature.
Thank you, Satish. I just look at the clock and I see that it's time.
It's nearly 9.
Yes, that's what we just say. So I really want to thank all of you for all your wisdom, your passion, your enthusiasm about our life. And I do hope, like, for the people who are listening to that, I took all your advices when we met 10 years ago to create a little place when I do my bread with my wheat. I just harvest my honey last week. And this is bringing so much joy to me, but to all the people that are surrounding, and it's inspire more people. So just be careful when you're giving advices, because then we make it real, and then we are more happy. It makes sense to what we do, give meaning to our life. So thank you very much for all these advices.
Thank you.
Practical.
Lots of love to all of you.
Lots of love to lovely seeing you, and we'll stay in touch.
So thank you again for all these exchanges, and thank you for being able to be part of such a great panel of participants.
Thank you, Maurice, for this conclusion. I think we've left with, I think Vandana and Casey are gone. Satish, do you want the last word before we conclude? You always
No, I think this has been a wonderful round table, even though it's only on the screen. But I agree with Maurice that we are physical beings and we are spiritual beings. And physical is the external and spiritual is the internal. Inner and outer, those two together. So like words and the meaning. Without meaning, words have no place, no value. And without words, we cannot express meaning. So matter and spirit go together. There is no dualism, there is no separation. And that sense of belonging, that sense of unity, manifesting in diversity of life. And so we celebrate diversity. Diversity is not division. Diversity is not conflict. Diversity is celebration of many forms. Like water, Maurice mentioned, water comes from the ocean and becomes rivers and lakes and wells and many, many forms. But then again, water goes back to the ocean. So in the same way, life manifests in many forms, but there's a unity of life. So if we can embrace the principle of unity and diversity and move away from conflicts and divisions and so on, then we can support each other, love each other, care for each other, and have a very good life. So thank you for this opportunity to be part of your seminar. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Satish. Thank you, Maurice. Thank you, Adelaide. And thank you, Camille. And thank you, Hugo. And thank you, Natalie. And I wish you a fantastic week. And it's just the beginning of this new era. And I think it's a good time to be on Earth right now.
Okay, thank you.